foolish tempts us in a way that wisdom doesn't. And I can prove this by saying that oftentimes we find us in a place of knowing what is right and then we don't choose it. And why is that? Because the wise thing often does not look like the most appealing thing. Would you agree? What is wise and right and good often carries some kind of price that is a little ugly to us. And meanwhile, foolishness promises a good time. And so, for example, it's one thing to say that I want to live a moral life of faithfulness to one person in marriage. It's another thing to resist the raging flood of hormones that seizes you in the moment of temptation. Like foolishness. So I saw this when I was in youth ministry all the time. It's one thing to say in the sober-minded light of day, you know, you're at youth group and you're talking about biblical sexuality and living a life of honor and morality and all this stuff in Christ through faith in Him. And so you say like, all right, so then I'm just going to reserve sexual intimacy for marriage. Okay, it's one thing to say that. It's a totally different thing when you find yourself in some situation and you have the raging hormones of an 18-year-old. And all of a sudden, foolishness looks a lot more alluring than wisdom. Yes? Maybe in the area of finance. It's one thing to say, I want to live a life that is fiscally responsible so that our family has security and stability and all of that, right? And everybody would say, well, yeah, that sounds like basically what we should do. It's another thing entirely to discipline your actual spending. Look, one of the most enlightening things I think a person can do is go back through the last few months and just make yourself a spreadsheet. I've done this. I do this fairly regularly, actually, in our house. And just literally put down on paper every single purchase you made, every single expenditure of money. And what you'll find is like, oh my gosh, some of that is so ugly. Look how much money we spent on food that didn't come out of our fridge. Look how much money we spent. And you can find that even though you have the desire to have wisdom, to discipline your spending, it's a totally different thing when you're confronted with Amazon Prime Day. And there's just everything that you want to buy. Wisdom is not often as tempting, as alluring as foolishness. Verse 2, Solomon says, foolishness harms a person, though, rather than helps him. So we're building an anatomy, a profile of foolishness. Only takes a little bit to outweigh a lot of wisdom. It's a lot more tempting and alluring than wisdom often.